I was cleaning up my bee room and I found all of these. Just look at this, all of these. So these are actually questions that I received from the boys at the penitentiary. So what happens is that at the end of every group, they're giving some paper and they basically write down the questions that they have on this paper. It's popped into this really fancy box. At the end of group, I take these questions, I bring them home, and then the next group we have, I answer them. So this was like a long time ago and I forgot to take them. So I just thought I would answer them here. There's some really good questions here, questions that you might find really helpful. So I just figured I'd walk through some of these and see what you think. So the first one was, how many ovaries does a queen bee have? The queen bee has 2 ovaries, same as we do. The difference is the amount of ovules that she has around her ovaries. So basically that means is that she has a lot of ovules. So that means that she's able to lay a whole bunch of eggs in the run of a day. So the queen basically lays up to 2,000 eggs a day. So she's a busy woman. That's all she does in the run of a day. So that's that question. The second one, let's see. So what do drones do when they're kicked out of the hive? That's sad. So drones are kicked out of the hive in the fall. What happens is that the worker bees feel that they eat too much and that they're eating all of the resources that they're going to have to get through the winter. So they kick them out. Fall, you'll sit by your hive and you'll see these worker bees dragging these drones out, chewing on the wings, chewing on their feet, and basically hauling them out of the hive. When the drones go to walk back in, the guard bees are there and they're not getting back in, they'll do the same. So what happens is that they either starve or they freeze. Drones don't have really good manuals. They can't really feed themselves that well. So they depend on worker bees to feed them. If there's no worker bees around, they're going to starve. As well as it gets cold, they're going to freeze. So that's really sad. I don't like that part of beekeeping. So the next question is, when does a queen bee sting? And when she stings, does she die? The queen bee's stinger is a little bit different than the worker bees. The queen bee is not barbed. By that, I mean when she enters into another queen stinging, it won't get stuck there. It just comes right back out again. However, queen bees don't usually sting humans. It's only, like I said, they save it for the other queens. And does she die? No, she doesn't die because she doesn't pull out all her insides like worker bees do when they sting. Okay, so I was wondering, where usually do bees make their hive? So they really make it in hollow trees or rock crevices or abandoned burrows. They really like hollow trees. And that's how we actually get the idea of a hive. Because when you think of a tree, it's like inside of a tree. So it's like standing up like a hive would be. So they actually develop all the comb in that tree. And when the winter comes, when you think about it, that tree is holding all the heat down here in the burrow part. They have heat on both sides and the heat is on the bottom as well. So it's very heated for them and it's very protected. So that's where they usually go as feral or as like a swarm. That's where they really like. Let's see here. So how do honeybees know that they're being threatened? So we all know that honeybees aren't typically aggressive. They are going to be aggressive if they feel threatened or if they are harmed or, if they feel like a smell of a pheromone like bananas or something like that. So yes, they will get a little bit aggressive at that point. So bees kind of look at different hints. For example, the color that someone has on. If it's black or if it's brown like a bear, they're going to get a bit aggressive because they're going to think that that's going to be a threat to their hive. If a beekeeper is very smelly, so that would be either like bananas or whether it's a fruity smell or even sweat. That would be like if you're overly warm or if you're anxious. If you're sweating, they'll also pick up on that. Your breath. That's another thing they really pick up on. Years and years ago, they used to like smoke cigars or cigarettes when they're actually doing their hive checks. And they found that that would really irritate the bees and make them even more aggressive. And that was because of the tobacco. So that's pretty interesting. Yeah, so that's that. What is a honeybee's strongest sense? So the sight, hearing, etc. to protect themselves in danger and bad weather. So I would have to say their smell, their sense of smell. And it's interesting because honeybees don't have a nose. They actually smell through their antenna. So their antenna is covered with little tiny hairs all over it, and they're called cincillas. And that allows the smell, and they actually taste through their antennas as well. So that's how they smell stuff around them. So what are they smelling? Pheromones. That's the big thing. So the queen produces a particular pheromone, the queen mandibular pheromone. Other worker bees produce different pheromone, where it's could be the Nasanov gland, or could be the Kochlevoff gland, which is the alarm pheromone. So they all produce that, and that's the smell they get from their antenna. They also use their antenna to sense up vibrations. And for example, in a dark hive, if another worker bee is doing like the round dance, they use their antennas to go over and feel what direction they're going to, and that'll tell them where their food is. But to go back to that, their smell is the most important. They also have good eyes, but their smell is more important. Okay. Let's see here. So how do bees stay warm in the winter? Thermogenesis. So thermogenesis is basically when honeybees get in that real tight cluster and they shake. They constantly shake. Their thorax is the middle part of the bee, and that's where their wings are, and that's where the most muscles are. So that's what they're kind of shaking and vibrating, and that's what creates heat. How do they create heat? They need honey. So what happens is that they eat all the honey in the hive in order to give them energy, in order for them to shake. They have to eat and they have to shake in order to maintain a certain temperature in the hive, which is about 35, 36, 37 degrees. And they hopefully maintain that all through winter. And it's kind of cool when you think about the cluster, because the bees on the cluster move in and they move out. They move in and out. So they take turns on getting warm, and then they go to the outer level, and then they go back in again. So the next question we have is, how do the wax glands work? I love wax glands. Wax glands are underneath the bee. And what basically it does is that it secretes a liquid. And what happens is that when it comes to the ear, the liquid solidifies into these flakes of wax. So another worker bee would come along the frame and say, oh, there's a little flake of wax. So they'll put that in their mouth, they'll combine it with enzymes, and then they'll go over to a cell or a comb, and they'll actually mold it to the hexagon shape of the cell. And that's what they do to the wax. So that's wax glands. I like wax glands. They're pretty funky. Did I already answer this about worker bees? I think I answered that. Just one second, guys. Okay, here we go. Is bee venom worse than snake venom? Snake venom is more toxic, but what you have to think about is with bee venom, you run the risk of becoming more of an allergic reaction. So bee venom has more of an allergic reaction than snake. So if you have an allergic reaction to bee venom, you're in trouble, and you have to get the proper medical care depending on the severity of your allergy. One guy mentioned, how long have bees existed? Millions and millions of years. How about that? And that's another thing. And this person, holy cow, he put like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 questions on one sheet. So I don't know if we'll do all of them, but how do honeybees mate? So we're talking about queens. So how does queen mate? The queen goes on her mating flight. So basically when the queen hatches out of her cells, she takes about 5 days for her skin to harden, her perfume to develop, and then she goes on her mating flight. So she goes on her mating flight, she flies to the drone congregation area, and that's basically a downtown for drones. It's filled with drones. So when the queen bee flies in that area, the drones get her smell. The drones have wicked eyes, and they're able to spot the queen from far, far away, and they're actually really, really fast. So the fastest, stronger drones are the ones that are going to mate with the queen. They mate high up in the air, and I'm glad of that because I don't want to see that happening. But they mate high up in the air, and as soon as they mate, the honeybee drone drops to the ground and dies. And the queen just continues on and mates with other drones. So she could mate with 15, 20 drones. It all depends. Then she goes back to her nest. And this is where it gets a bit tricky. So some queens can go out in more than one mating flight, while some only go out on one. It all depends on the queen. So there's no right or wrong. It depends on the queen. So every queen is different. A queen might go out on a mating flight the second time because she doesn't feel like she's filled enough. Her spermatheca doesn't have enough sperm. So she's going to go out the second time and get more sperm to last her longer. Or she may feel, you know what, I'm good. I'm not going out there again. And she's good. She doesn't come out until she goes for a swarm or she dies. So that's that one. How do they communicate? My goodness. So they communicate by pheromones. So that's perfume. So when you think about it, brood has pheromones, the queen has pheromones, and worker bee has pheromone. Even the drone has pheromones, not a lot, but they have a little bit of pheromone. So that's how they communicate with one another. They also communicate by dancing. So that would be the round dance or the waggle dance, vibrations, and even sound. So the other day I put on a post and it was the queen making quacking and piping noises, and that's how the queen communicates with the other queens that are probably still in their cell. I'm coming, I'm going to get you, I'm going to be the queen of this hive. So that's the way they communicate. So that's that one. And how far can they fly? So the honeybee, forager bee, usually they go about 5 to 8 kilometers as their foraging distance. So they don't go really far away when they go and forage. However, if they have to, they will. For example, the queen bee, I've heard, can go up to like 20 kilometers to find a drone congregation area before she comes back. So again, it depends on the resources that are near. It depends on their energy, how much energy they have. So it depends all on that. And how high can they fly? So they can fly 10 to 40 meters, or they can fly up to 200. So again, it all depends. The drone congregation area where they mate is probably about 40 meters. That's how high they fly. And that's it. So I think that's everything. Like, wow, these are really good questions. I think I repeated some of them. I hope you learned something. If you have any particular questions, just give me a comment down below and I'll answer them. Anyway, guys, hope that things are well. Take care. Bye-bye.